dark legends cling to certain corners of North America where the land itself seems poisoned by grief. These cursed sites, shrouded in shadow, are said to harbor restless spirits and unseen forces. There's a dark expanse west of Texas's infamous Dogman Triangle, a land where the wind carries whispers and shadows seem to move with unnatural intent. Here, the earth itself feels heavy with sorrow, burdened by the tragedies that once unfolded across its desolate plains. Locals speak in hushed tones of the spirits that stalk these lands, twisted, shifting figures that defy understanding. Some call them skinwalkers, others know them as dogmen, monstrous entities said to possess the power to change form, blending man, beast, and perhaps something far more sinister. When a family moves into a home connected with a tragic incident, they become hunted by demonic shapeshifters. Some have called the entities skinwalkers, but the past reveals a different story. In the search for answers, we uncovered a tragic chain of events. What started as skinwalkers and the death of 10 men would lead to the extermination of thousands. The paranormal witness episode called The Ranch is supposedly inspired by the Warren wagon train massacre of 1871. Coincidentally, the terrifying events unfolded just west of what some call the Texas Dogman Triangle. As the TV show's story goes, in 2003, a small family moved into an old home in Abilene, Texas that sat on 10 acres of land. They would discover evidence later on that pointed to the home being owned by a Captain Henry Warren. The family's first day moving in led to them discovering a human jawbone in the backyard. This fact seems unlikely since such a discovery would mandate law enforcement investigation and dental records analysis. Either way, after getting settled, their elderly grandmother moved in. She needed assistance as she was suffering from stage 4 cancer. It wasn't long before they noticed strange things about their home, mystic symbols carved into a wood floor, claw marks in the garage that were wider than a human hand, and most shockingly, wolf-like Native American ghosts with glowing red eyes lurking in the shadows. At one point, the grandmother was believed to be possessed or under attack by demonic forces, just after claiming that she was talking to a Mr. Warren. All of these events would culminate in 2006, with their 2 daughters being pursued through the night by what many consider to be skinwalkers. The pursuit took place just after the young women saw a skinwalker in an outbuilding. As the 2 girls drove down the driveway to escape the property, they noticed multiple red-eyed entities chasing their vehicle. The mother and daughters would move out shortly thereafter, while the father remained until he could sell the home. The episode itself is considered one of the best paranormal witness stories. At the end, you are left with the basic idea that the Warren massacre happened nearby and the home was connected somehow. The TV show does not provide a direct answer to what may be happening. If the actual massacre occurred 100 miles away from the home, why is the home being haunted or stalked by demonic native warriors? The shortest, hypothetical answer may be this: Henry Warren was being haunted by fallen tribal warriors or cursed by powerful native shaman, essentially designating him the cause of their misery following the wagon train attack. In the process of defending himself spiritually, he engraved circles of protection or possibly performed seances in the home. The spirits of these warriors are attached to the Warren Ranch, despite being 100 miles away from the massacre location. It's important to understand that at the time of the massacre, some native tribes were warning their warriors not to attack settlers and stir up trouble. The distractions of the US Civil War are now over, and the US military was battle-hardened and idle. The Wagon train massacre, despite its 7 deaths, influenced the US to launch open warfare against the tribes. Henry Warren was well known to the tribes, and they felt his wagon train was the catalyst for their own misfortune despite the warriors themselves being the instigators. The shape-shifting belief of the tribes involved in the attack was not the same as those of skinwalking Navajos, but there may be a connection nonetheless. Whatever is roaming the lands near the Warren homestead is animalistic in nature. Some have called the entities demonic dogmen or fallen dog soldiers. Some tribal scholars felt that the tribe's misery was being manifested as spirit warriors hunting down Henry Warren as a sort of scapegoat. Another theory states Henry Warren may have been a spiritualist and follower of the occult, to which there is no proof. The connection is often insinuated since he was a New Yorker, and at the time the entire region was a spiritualist hotbed centered around the infamous Burned-Over district. These ideas were put forth to explain why the Warren home had a circle of protection engraving in the floors. The claw marks from decades past could be a result of supernatural attacks. The possession of the grandmother could indicate demonic activity, possibly from open portals. It's possible a more modern group of occultists performed rituals in the home. While it was unoccupied, this might explain the engravings prior to the family moving in. There is so much to speculate. Perhaps we need to focus on actual documented facts for a moment. There are 2 locations in Texas involved with this story, Loving and Abilene. These locations are about 100 miles apart and just west of Dallas, Texas. The actual massacre location, near Loving, is so far away it seems unlikely that paranormal activity linked directly to the site is involved. The idea that the home was owned by Captain Warren is the likely link, which poses the question, was Captain Warren being stalked by apparitions involved in the incident? We know that 3 Native Americans and 7 wagon train members died during the attack. One of the men responsible for killing a Native American warrior was first tied to a wagon wheel, then his legs were slow roasted over a fire after his tongue was cut out. He would die in agony many hours later. The apparitions are suspected to be skinwalkers, but this is most likely being confused with the shape-shifting belief of the tribes. The key tribal member that was guiding the tribe's decisions was a shaman named Mamanti. Mamanti instructed the warriors not to attack the first white men they came upon, but rather to wait for a second group. A fascinating fact is that the 150 warriors first came across none other than General William Tecumseh Sherman and his 15 cavalrymen. General Sherman was there to investigate claims that Fort Sill Reservation tribes were crossing the border with Oklahoma to raid wagon trains in Texas. Crossing the border helped tribes avoid capture and punishment due to jurisdiction limits. Initially, Sherman thought the claims were unfounded until the 5 survivors of the Warren wagon train arrived, reporting the attack shortly after sundown at Fort Richardson. This is an important moment that cannot be understated. Up until this time, the Quaker Society of Friends had been instrumental in encouraging the US government to avoid resuming offensive operations against the indigenous tribes after the Civil War. That is not to say that indigenous tribes were treated fairly. The US restrictions on tribal hunting grounds quite often brought tribes to the brink of starvation. This type of government meddling led to the rise of the Dog Soldiers and the Cheyenne resistance of the late 1860s. Prior to the Warren wagon train massacre, the Texas system of forts that the wagon trains had been supplying was being established for defensive purposes. Once Sherman apprehended the chiefs and warriors involved in the Warren massacre, the advice given to the Secretary of the Army was for offensive operations to resume. As a direct result of this somewhat insignificant raid, the US military resumed open warfare against all native tribes not already on reservations. If Sherman had not been present to hear the survivor accounts, He was going to recommend continued defensive posturing. The spoils of the raid included 40 mules laden with corn and supplies, but the price paid in Native American blood would be massive. Not much is actually known about Henry Warren's disposition. An official record of Captain Warren states the following. Captain Henry Warren was a New Yorker, a courteous gentleman with Chesterfield manners and the appearance of an English lord. He came to Texas in 1864 and had the distinction of being elected to the state senate in 1866 from the El Paso district. Being more than 600 miles from Austin at the time, Captain Warren had to travel with a mule train of wagons to be protected from native warriors. It took him so long to get to the capital that the legislature had met, transacted all the business at hand, and adjourned before he arrived. Approximately 1 year after the massacre, Henry Warren would move 80 miles to the east, just outside Dallas, to Weatherford, Texas. Was he running from paranormal activity or simply relocating? There were other wagon train massacres throughout history that had deadlier results. There have also been numerous raids on Native American tribes that resulted in bloody carnage of innocent women and children. It's hard to imagine a time when the scalps of Native American men, women, and children were purchased as a novelty item by Americans, but this is part of the bloody history that was US expansion. Many paranormal investigators believe the shadow of colonial expansion's dark and violent past still lingers, a stain etched into the land itself. The weight of those grim deeds is thought to stir restless spirits, weaving tragedy into the very fabric of certain places. It's easy to dismiss such notions, to claim disbelief in ghosts or scoff at tales of the supernatural. But most skeptics hesitate to linger in a forgotten graveyard after dark. And even fewer would build a home near cursed lands, native burial grounds, or sites of tragedy. What do you think is going on at the Warren home? Do you think the family's story is simply a hoax? Does this sound like dogmen or skinwalkers, or is it something else altogether? While paranormal content can be thrilling, its backstories are often dark and tragic. We explore the history behind hauntings and paranormal events, seeking answers to these mysteries. Unfortunately, YouTube discourages open discussion of such topics, pushing us to soften or obscure important details. That's why we rely on Patreon for support and the occasional like and subscribe to keep us motivated. At Late Night Alone, we believe the best ghost stories are those rooted in a fascinating grain of truth. Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video.